Okay, good early evening. Good early evening, Randy Campbell. Part 4 of this series of me explaining my life and hopefully articulating it well enough that people actually understand and get a idea of what it is that I've gone through in this life to get to right here, right now. I'm still suffering from being hit by a car. I was hit by a car. The woman that hit us, I was on the back of a motorcycle. She left the scene, didn't stick around to see how I was. I had no medical insurance and I had no ability to deal with that situation. So I ended up getting back on the Pasola, the motorcycle, 4 times that night with my legs swinging, both bones broken in half, and I ended up going to the hospital and getting that taken care of. So, one sec, my buddy's here. It's my good friend Sep. You meet a lot of people in this life when you come to a third world country, and it's wonderful to meet people. Yeah, brother, no problem. So, yeah, I was back on that Pasola 4 times that night with my leg in the shape of the letter L, swinging back and forth, no medical assistance. One of the events was I had to go to the hospital to get taken care of. Their x-ray machine wasn't working. I had to get back at a Pasola anyways. It was a long night. But now I'll get back to my childhood living in that home. I don't want to shine a horrible light on that home. I will say this: there was definitely no love. There was no family. I never felt a part of a family. I felt very much like I was there but wasn't there. I existed but wasn't a member of anything important. I was just a body there. Growing up, a lot of beatings, a lot of abuse. But with that being said, there was also, we went camping, in the summers, and we experienced life. There was a creek near the house, and I would go by the creek and hang out down there by myself. I spent a lot of time alone. I didn't really have that many friends. I had a few, but like I said, I had, failed school, public school, so many times that any friend that I had moved on, and every year I had to make new friends. But I spent to the age of 14 in that home. My brother was there as well, Edward. And one day I wake up in my bunk bed and I notice everybody's gone, and I'm a little confused. I'm like, why is everybody gone? I'm like maybe 14 years old. And I get up and I see my clothes are set up on the table by the bed. I look in my drawers and there's no clothes there. So I'm a little shocked. I put on the clothes that are there. I go downstairs. My breakfast is sitting on the table. Finally, the woman that ran the house, who absolutely hated me, says, eat your breakfast, and when you're done, take the boxes at the door to the van. So I did. I was told. I ate my breakfast and took the boxes, put them in the van, waited for them. Finally, we got in a van and we drove to Toronto, which was about an hour and a half from where I was living. They brought me to this other home. It was a group home. Sat me in the living room area, excuse me, in the living room area while they held some kind of a meeting in the office. Finally, they came out, and I was informed that I would not be returning with them to the home where I grew up, which was actually Mount Albert, Ontario. And they said their goodbyes. I said my goodbyes. They left. And now I'm in a group home. And I didn't understand, how that had happened. I was never informed, days or weeks in advance. It just happened suddenly. And here I was sitting there, and the woman, one of the staff came out, one of the social workers came out, introduced herself and said that I could go sit in the lounge room, which was like a study room. And she said, you can use the stereo and you can relax in there. And do you smoke? And I thought that was a trick question. I'm like, what do you mean, do I smoke? She goes, well, do you smoke? Because you can smoke if you'd like. I said, yeah. So she gave me a little bit of money and said, if you go across the street to the plaza, in the convenience store, you can get 2 packs of cigarettes for 75 cents or whatever it was back then. So I did that, and I came back. I went into the lounge, And I was shocked that I was allowed to play the stereo because I had never been allowed to turn on a television or a stereo, a radio of any kind growing up. So I turned on the stereo, and the very first song that came on was by the Eagles, New Kid in Town. And I thought, oh, well, that's me. I'm the new kid in town. So I spent some time in that group home, and it was a really nice group home. The chef was wonderful. I remember her name was Betty, and she cooked the most amazing meals. We were allowed to eat whatever we wanted. She would put a big bowl of potatoes and gravy and roast beef and everything on the table, and you could eat as much as you wanted, which I wasn't used to neither. We were given our dinner, and that was it, and it was never anything extravagant or anything amazing. It was just, sometimes for dinner we'd have Kraft dinner that was barely stirred and still, dry pockets of cheese, and we'd have, powdered milk. It was not a good, let me just say this. When I got to this group home, the food was unimaginable. I couldn't believe that people were eating like this. And so I stayed there for several months and watched many other young people come through that home and get placed into different environments, different homes. There was one kid, Angel. He was a native Indian guy. And him and I kind of befriended each other, and we became friends in that home. And every weekend he kept going away to some place that he would call the farm. And he would go to the farm on the weekends and then come back on Sunday, and he said it was amazing. He loved it there. And I mentioned that because I'm going to bring that up a little bit later because it's a part of my life. So there I am in this home. Finally, they placed me in a home in Scarborough, Ontario, which is still a borough of Toronto. And we get to this home, and I got my luggage, and we get to the door, and
You've got mail.
And I walk in, and I'm introduced to this family, this young family that have a baby, another boy around my age living in the basement, also foster care type living environment for him. And I remember them telling me, Randy, we're going to love you. Don't worry. You can stay here. We're going to take care of you. We're like your family now. And they never really, after my social worker left and I was sitting there in the house, they gave me my room, and I remember it was pink. The walls were pink, and I'm like, no, this can't be happening. Anyways, I was there for several months, and they never spoke to me. Like, they seldom spoke to me. But it wasn't what they said about this love that I had never experienced. It was never about me being a part of their family, which I had never experienced. And I really thought that they meant that, but didn't. And so I was in there for several months, going to high school about a block from the house, of which I didn't go to any of the classes. I could have cared less about school. Matter of fact, I hated it. And they had figured out that I wasn't going to school. I was just hanging around the pinball spot up the road, and I wasn't really participating in anything educational or school or work. So they ended up, making that a problem for me, obviously. And I was standing at my locker one day in high school, and by this time I got to be 32. No, I'm not 30, but I'm older. And I'm standing by my locker, and another kid was standing by his locker, and he looked at me and goes, hey, you don't like school. I go, why would I? Well, what's to like about it? And he said, well, how old are you? And I told him my age, and he said, well, you can quit. You can walk right out that door and not come back. And I grabbed him by his shirt and pushed him up against the locker. I said, you better not be lying to me. You lying to me? He said, no, you can quit. You don't have to go to school. You're at an age you can quit. They can't make you go to school. And I thanked him and picked his shirt for him and looked at that front door, never even shut my locker. I just walked out that front door and never looked back. And so as I'm walking up the street, about a block up the street, there's a man painting a white church. And he's painting the church, and I look at him, he looks at me, he goes, hey, how you doing, son? I go, I'm good, how are you doing, sir? He said, you looking for work? I said, yeah. What? He said, can you paint? I said, I can learn. He said, okay, I'll pay you, I think it was $30 a day or something. Not much, but $30 a day. And that day, I started working painting that church. I'll come back for part 5. You're going to